Well, good afternoon again, and thank you for joining us for this little segment which we sort of tried to review books which have caught our attention, and these are the books which have caught my attention over the last few weeks. As you can see on the lectern, we're looking at a book entitled Crossing Hitler. It's a new book. I think it came out last year and I was able to pick it up in a book sale. I'm just going to read a little bit of the flyleaf to give you a bit of story, try and set the story a little bit more. And it says, in the Eden Dance Palace trial of 1931, there's a wonderful name, isn't it? The Eden Dance Palace trial. 4 Nazi stormtroopers stood accused of criminal assault and attempted murder. A lawyer for the prosecution requested the presence of Adolf Hitler as a witness. And this is the story of that lawyer who requested the presence of Adolf Hitler, and his name was Hans Litten. And Hans Litten was an up-and-coming German lawyer on the Berlin circuit. Family had been judges, what I can make out, and in the legal system. His father was dean of the faculty. So Hans Litten was very much into this. The book tells us a little bit here that he struggled very much with... Litten was a truly extraordinary figure, embodying some of the complexities of his age, the son of a prominent law dean who refused to acknowledge his Jewish roots, and of a mother descended from Lutheran ministers. Litten espoused both Judaism and a radical left-wing politics. So you can see that these explosive philosophies in Berlin of the late 20s and the 30s were enough to sort of put him on a collision course with Hitler. And as the book says, he called Hitler as a witness. The book explains that at this time Hitler was trying to distance himself from the SA, the street thugs, so to speak. They'd done their work very successfully under Captain Rome, and he was sort of trying to distance himself as a sort of moderate politician there to call for Germany's support, as he saw it, to wrest it from what had happened and the betrayal of the Versailles Treaty. So the last thing he wanted was this left-wing Jewish lawyer just to question him. And the interesting thing about this book is that the publishers at the end have put a transcript of the dialogue that went between... There, you can see it there. You can see it there between him and Hitler. And it actually goes on and on and on, and Hitler was sitting there absolutely furious, and you can see Litten, Hitler, it goes on. I mean, you really should have picked up the signs that he'd made an enemy here. So that's very interesting, reading through this and the way the legal system works in Germany. But remarkable man, but he was on a collision, of course, with the Nazis, and especially with Hitler. And of course, when Hitler won the election of 1933, he became the all-powerful Chancellor. Hans Litten was in his sights. I'm not going to tell you too much about the book, but I'd like to show you some of the photographs and just make some comments about some of the photographs. I mean, he was a remarkable man, taking on the Nazis. Few others were doing it then. There you see him as a little boy there, normal little boy. There's his father there, First World War, and there he is there as a little boy. One of the interesting members of the family was his mother. There she is there, a very formidable woman. According to the book, she had a lot of contacts in high places. She was able to write about her son. He was actually arrested soon afterwards, and as Hitler's star ascended, Hans Litten's star descended in and out of the camps and so forth till he got to Dachau. But she was very persistent in writing to these top Nazis. She wrote to Ribbentrop, and I think she wrote to Dr. Goebbels. She seemed to have doors open so that she could get in touch with these people, and I think they all said, well, we would like to do more, but of course he put the Fuhrer on the witness stand and cross-questioned and grilled him. And she also had contacts with the English hierarchy. She was able to get in touch with the English hierarchy and see whether they could pull any strings with the English Foreign Office and so forth, and they came up with the case that if it were anybody else we might be able to do something, but we're not able to do it. That's his brother there, Rainer Litten. He was very much involved in the struggle in the 30s, not on the legal side. Now, here's some interesting pictures. Here's a picture here of a family who were very close to the Litten family, the First family. They emigrated to Palestine in 1935. They saw which way it was going. And I suppose in retrospect, Litten should have really seen that the signs were coming. But she, whilst he had been arrested, before he went to Dachau, he was held in another prison, She was responsible to try to have him freed, and it failed miserably, of course. And it says her eyes convey the determination of a young woman who at 23 had already served 9 months in a prison for trying to free Hans Litten. And there is the man at the bottom there, early 1920s, promising young man on his way up, brilliant student, but perhaps didn't read the signs of what was to come when you take on these monsters like Adolf Hitler, or Joseph Stalin, or Kim Il-sung, or Mao Zedong, and the rest of them. There he is there, in front of the Bear Fountain in Berlin. We passed there, we were there some years ago in Berlin. There's Hitler in a Berlin courtroom for the case against Walter Stenz, early 1932. And you can see Hitler reading the notes there. And there is Hans Litten. You can see him in the middle there. This is at the trial. And soon afterwards, he was arrested by the Gestapo once Hitler came in. I'm not going to say too much about it, but really it's the story of how he fought his case in the courts, and others like him, and the way the German legal system, I'll come to one of the photographs in a minute, the last photograph, photograph, of how the German legal system was able to use against anyone who dissents against them. It's like this in many parts of the world now, isn't it, where there's a one-party state, one-party government. The state is very much a tool of the government, and certainly with Hitler it was to be that way. There would be no opposition, and all the prerequisites that you had, you know, innocent before proven guilty, jury system, a law and so forth, would be swept away with the rise of the Third Reich. So Litten, a very good book. He did pay for the crime. It's an excellent book to read the way the German system was going there. That looks like Rudolf Hess there, who supposedly flew to England in 1941 with peace treaty to get the government to sign. Flew up to Scotland, of course. That's the story. Supposed to have been a double put there by Churchill, stood trial at Nuremberg. But finally, after all the things that happened to him, he was very brutally treated. I'm not going to say too much about it. He ended up at Dachau, and Dachau is of great interest to us because my son James and myself went to Dachau and we saw the conditions of so many of the inmates there, and somebody there who knew Franz Litten did that drawing, as you can see, drawn by a friend in Lichtenberg soon afterwards. So you can see the gauntness of the man, the hopelessness. I think if I'd been sharing a cell with him, I think I would have seen that his rejection of God seems to come through this so often. He was very much into quoting Shakespeare and German poets like Goethe and Fürst and all of these people. The Bible doesn't seem to have had any interest to him as such, and I think this was a rejection of his Jewish roots. The message that Christ gave, that he is the door, that you have to come through him, Hans Litten doesn't seem to have accepted. So there is, in my opinion, reading this, a denial of God's mercy and Christ's sacrifice for Hans Litten and all of these people. So I won't say too much about it. It's very harrowing reading the Gestapo accounts of his treatment in Dachau, crossing Hitler, but it is a happy ending of something that happened in Berlin a few years ago, so I'll let you read that. But I was just caught by one statement by somebody who's written a little memoir about him in 1939, and he said this is a very good quote here, and it could be applicable today in today's world and the coming role of the Antichrist coming along in the courts and all these things. The law is always the cause of the weak. The strong need no law, and since they already have the power, they are all too easily inclined to get along without it. Very, very true. Hans Litten, remarkable book for the man who had the misfortune to draw the short straw to cross-question Hitler and rather made a meal of it and paid the penalty afterwards. Excellent book. I think it might be in paperback now. But this concludes all we're writing about at the Third Reich, and we hope to be back next week with some other books. So from this ministry, thank you, happy reading, and Maranatha.